So it's a couple days later, and it appears that the great Canadian-U.S. trade war has ended. At least it's been delayed for 30 days, according to Donald Trump. We're going to revisit this situation in 30 days, potentially, and then maybe this whole mess starts over again. But for the time being, the 25% tariffs imposed by the U.S. on Canada and the 25% tariffs counter-imposed by Canada on the U.S. have been postponed. Literally, the liquor stores across Canada were in the process of taking all the U.S. bottles out of their stores. And then, 24 hours later, they're like, I guess we're putting them back now. Whether that'll make a difference and Canadians will actually start buying American things again, or this big Canadian national moment where everyone decided to buy Canadian, like every Canadian was flooding their social media with flags, and people had made these enormous lists of here's an American product, here's the Canadian equivalent. Everyone was making all these plans to buy Canadian, and then suddenly the tariffs are over. And I think a lot of Canadians are like, but we just made the list. Should we just keep buying the Canadian thing? Yeah, I think I'm going to keep buying the Canadian thing. So I think the lasting impacts from this will continue and might surprise a lot of American businesses how much the sales drop in Canada. But we'll get to that stuff. First, let's just talk about if this was a trade war, if this was some back and forth negotiation, who do we think won? Did Canada come out on top? Did the U.S. come out on top? From the Canadian perspective, I think a lot of people feel proud in this moment. A lot of people think that we didn't give in to the big bully in this situation, the economy, which is 10 times our size, the country, which is 10 times our size, which threatened economic destruction for so many Canadian businesses and industries. We could have appeared quite weak in that situation and said, listen, Trudeau could have got on the phone with Trump and said, please, whatever it takes, we'll do whatever it takes. We're basically the 51st state at this point. We'll do whatever you want, President Trump, please. How can we get rid of this Trump war? How do we get rid of this Trump war? How do we get rid of this trade war? Same thing, essentially. But he didn't, actually. He made what most Canadians see as being a very, very important and strong speech, and countered with the same tariffs. And basically, if it's a poker game, the U.S. put all their chips on the table. Canada said, you know what? We're putting our chips in too. And I think most people see that as Canada survived a tough moment. On the other hand, if you're a Trump supporter, if you're an American who thinks the U.S. president can do no wrong, which there seem to be a lot of people who feel that way, unfortunately, from that point of view, I think those people also think they won because, Trump made this big, bold statement about tariffs to Canada and to Mexico as well. Mexico, I think, is an equal partner in this situation in that they also had tariffs enacted at the same time and then taken away on the same day. The idea was Trump wants to fix the border. Trump's going to do whatever he can in his country to fix the border. And then he's going to look at the two supposed allies and bully them into, do this for me or else. And, love him or hate him, you have to admit that Trump got the agreement from both countries, right? He got the $1 billion plus funding from Justin Trudeau. He got we now have a fentanyl czar, which is clearly like a name. Like Trudeau would not name someone the fentanyl czar. That's very Trumpian. It's clearly Trump had a list of things that he wanted, and then Trudeau agreed to them. And now we have a delay, a pause at least, on these tariffs. And so, the irony here is that some people who pay closer attention to this stuff than I do have pointed out that the $1 billion of funding was already promised to like President Biden back in December. So, basically some people are saying that what Trudeau promised was just basically like what was already on the way. And so he's just like, yeah, President Trump, yeah, sure, we'll give you that, yes. We just gave him all of these things and said, yes, you can tell your base that you did all of this. But secretly it was already happening. So, yeah, it's kind of funny when you when you look close enough at the situation. But, whether that is entirely the case or not, I don't even think matters that much. The point is, to Trump supporters, they wanted secure borders, and they got it. They were able to bully Canada into doing what they want. And so, even though I am proud of my country for standing up and rallying together and not blinking when we had this metaphorical gun like pointed to our head, right? I think that relations have not normalized between Canada and the U.S., and I think how myself and most Canadians feel about Americans right now hasn't gone back to normal. Canadians won't forget what just happened. Neither will Mexicans, neither will like all of the countries that you are bullying with the threat of economic destruction. In this case, a threat that hasn't even gone away. It's just been postponed for 30 days. So you can imagine a situation where 30 days from now, Trump comes back and says, okay, actually, what else does he want? Okay, you're going to allow us to have a new military base in northern Canada, or we're going to have these tariffs. You're going to allow every Canadian to, what else would Trump do? Trump's friends, Trump is clearly like pretty close with Elon Musk right now, so he could say, you're going to build 10 new Tesla factories, and you're going to get rid of these other factories that you're working with, countries like China and Japan, or the tariffs are coming, right? It's essentially a tool to bully another democratic state into doing whatever you want. And that's the point I really want to stress here. Who won the Canadian-U.S. trade war? Like, who outplayed the other person, Trump or Trudeau? The patriot in me wants to say Trudeau because I want to stand up for my country. But I actually see the argument for Trump as well. I actually see the argument for saying Trump got what he wanted by any means necessary. But I think the real question here isn't like which leader won, but which country won. And I think the country that won is Canada. I think if you look at even the comment section of my last video on this topic, it's full of Americans who are disappointed in their leadership right now and apologetic towards Canadians and showing their sympathy and saying like, we're sorry, we don't feel this way towards you. I hope you can forgive us for this guy who we didn't want here. And then there are occasional, people who support Trump in the comment section, which, listen, I'm not trying to make I guess what I'm saying is I want the comment section to be a place that anyone feels safe sharing their views. If you're a Trump supporter, share your views. If you have like a rational, logical reason why this is happening, and you think that Trump is a good thing and he needs to do this, then that's okay. But if your entire argument, which I seem to be seeing a lot of, is just, well, Canada, like you guys should just become the 51st state. You don't have to deal with this. This whole idea of how certain Americans see the world, which is not only are we a country, but we are the leaders of the planet, and it's our destiny to take over other states, and that is essentially how China and Russia see the world, right? That is how forgot how to speak. I can do it. Authoritarian states see the world, right? And I've spent a lot of time in Asia. I spent 6 months living in Vietnam. I spent a bunch of time in South Korea as well. So I can tell you that these smaller countries in Asia, in Eastern Asia particularly, really dislike China. Vietnam has a lot of cultural similarities to China. You could kind of see them as the Canada to the US. Like, they're the smaller country, but in many ways they're similar to China. But a lot of people there really dislike China. The reason they dislike China is for so much time, China has been illegally fishing right off the coast of Vietnam. They've been bullying Vietnam economically. You know, their people just don't respect Vietnam. They just see them as this small, backward country. And we're China. We're the big military here. So you do what we say. And the problem with a big fish bullying little fish is eventually all those little fish get together and the big fish realizes they don't have any friends anymore. And I think that's a situation the U.S. is dangerously close to. Actually, I'm going to restate that. I don't think you're dangerously close to it. I think you are already there. I think the U.S. has already burned a lot of their friendships and a lot of their goodwill throughout the Western world, throughout Europe, throughout Canada, throughout all of the Americas, actually, going down through Central and Latin America. The U.S. was always a country that I perceived as having its flaws, but there was, I think a lot of people always thought, well, we need to forgive the U.S. because at least they're better than Russia, at least they're better than China. Look at the lack of freedom people have over there. You know, Russia will throw their political dissidents in prison for speaking out. China will just try to invade Taiwan. Like, they will just do these things that, you know, China will just take over Hong Kong by force by silencing any journalists who are speaking out about it. We don't do that in America. We have freedom in America. Therefore, even America's flaws need to be overlooked because there's still the beacon of hope in this flawed world that we live in. They're the best thing that we have. Therefore, we're on America's side. But what happens when you lose that moral high ground? What happens when, just to get a few more Canadian troops on the border and just to get, you know, a small drop in the bucket of funding, when you think about it, you're going to destroy generations of goodwill with your northern neighbor? Yeah, the American people are not winning in this trade when you think of what's really been lost here, which is the goodwill of a neighbor. And so if that is Trump's plan for 4 years, just to one by one pick off any country that might like the U.S. and grab what you can and lose their respect, the United States will quickly find out that these actions have consequences. Freedom-loving Americans, I sympathize with you all. Truly, I mean, this is maybe the most important thing I'm saying in this video. Myself and other Canadians and other people around the world really are cheering for you to hold on to your values, to hold on to your, to just keep being a country that people looked up to.